Hey there, internet friends. Welcome to another episode of That Nerdy Site Show, weekly podcast where the team members from That Nerdy Site sit down together to talk about our lives and all of the nerdy things we love about them. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and once again joining me, Cameron Abbott. How you doing, Cam?
Hey, what's going on?
What's going on is you and I went and saw The Marvels on Friday night well, you had the day off after I got off work Friday night. So yeah, we're going to sit down and do as we often do on these kinds of post big new Marvel or whatever kind of movies. We're going to do our spoiler cast episode. We'll talk about kind of our spoiler-free impressions of the film first, and then we'll dive into very specifically delineated spoilers, as we often do. If you like the show, please remember to like, subscribe, rate, review, share the podcast everywhere you can, all that fun stuff. So yeah, Cam, kick me off here with your spoiler-free impressions of The Marvels.
The Marvels is a high-energy, bombastic film with a lot of fun and a lot of energy. I already said high energy, but of course that goes with high energy is a lot of energy. And it's extremely kinetic. There is something about this film that I think works on an intrinsic level of chemistry between its cast members. And I think that overall, it is probably one of the better, if not best, Marvel films or Marvel products we've gotten in the last couple of years. So that's kind of where I'm at with it.
Where I imagine like Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is probably like up there for you previously. Does this like surpass this? Is there anything like in post Endgame world? And I guess probably like No Way Home probably is also like the pinnacle of a post Endgame world.
Yeah.
But anything else out there that like this kind of falls below, or is this kind of up in that?
It's definitely in the upper echelon. I think that the strong decisions that it chooses to make as far as its pacing goes helps keep it up there. Because at no point does this film feel bogged down at any point. At no point does it feel like it slows down for any particular reason. It just it is the epitome of because and then therefore. Like it is like consistent story beats of this happens, therefore this happens, or this happens because this happened. And it does not let itself slow down its pace. And so for me, that definitely elevates it as far as like its pacing overall keeps it up there above things like Ant-Man and Quantumania. I think it's definitely up there with like like I was much higher on Guardians Volume 3 than you were. Mm-hmm. And so for me, it's like up there. I think for you, it's probably surpassed that. But for me, I think it's definitely at that point where it's reached that point.
I don't know. Yeah, for me, I mean, to your point there of like this is a very fast pace. It's an hour and 45, and this isn't like that D+ show. But when we get to that D+ show, one of the trivia things I could pull is this is the shortest MCU film.
Completely, and you see and feel that.
Yeah. I think as you and I touched on, of course, on the drive home and stuff. I think Iman Vellani is the standout here as Miss Marvel.
Absolutely.
She carries over the infectious kind of love and affinity for the Miss Marvel Kamala Khan character that we got in the Miss Marvel Disney Plus series. And so it's like she's a breath of fresh air to get to see her back kind of on the screen. And now, obviously, like fangirling out around Captain Marvel, as you would expect. I think... pulling from kind of, obviously what we've seen in the trailers and stuff, the idea and the kind of gimmick of the film that like the three kind of leads' powers are quantum entangled. So if they use their powers, they swap places, I think does give a fun kinetic and frenetic energy to the fights, to the choreography. And then even like just some downtime moments when they're like playing with those abilities, I think leads to a lot of fun in a way that we don't often get to see in Marvel stuff, when so much of it is like the world stakes are ending kind of thing. I like the performances. I think the story is probably one of the weakest elements of this one.
I think by far it's the weakest element.
And I think there are a lot of like ideas that get half introduced and then kind of dropped to move on to the next thing.
Or there are things where we weren't introduced to them earlier and then suddenly they're plot points.
Yeah. Um, yeah. Especially like there's almost like they take some time, and we'll dive into this more when we get into spoiler stuff. But they take time to kind of like set up a conflict that seems like it would have been like that. They use like flashbacks to kind of fill us in on what happened between Captain Marvel 1 and now, and it's like, or you could have just done that like in sequence in the movies or something like that. So there's some interesting beats there that didn't quite work for me. I think Brie Larson gets to have a little bit of fun in this one, but I think she still is kind of much like in the Captain Marvel film, is hampered by the circumstance they've put the character in. With Captain Marvel, it was she doesn't have her memory for most of the movie, so she's not even playing a character, she's playing amnesia. And here she's still kind of struggling with that a little bit, and there's multiple references to she's still trying to get her memories. And then when we do get glimpses of like effectively the 30 years between the events of Captain Marvel and now, like that's where I think like, oh, interesting fun ideas get introduced and then almost immediately dropped, and we move on to the next thing.
It's they're like saying, hey, this stuff happened in the last 30 years. It's like, that really would have been great to know about Captain Marvel's character, like in a longer term storytelling for her journey. And we're just getting a couple flashbacks of it. So there is like a levels of like, they gave us enough to serve the story they're telling, but it's leaving a story that deserved to have been told.
Yeah, I think maybe that's part of my biggest grand issue with like the story is in making this the Marvels movie. We don't really get a full Captain Marvel story. We don't really get a full Miss Marvel story. And then Monica Rambeau, like, who we last really saw in WandaVision, and that's really, I mean, we saw her as a child in the first Captain Marvel movie, but then, like, this iteration of the character was very quickly introduced and kind of given their powers in WandaVision and has not been seen since, makes this, like, 3 parts of a movie that don't quite add up to a full movie for me. There is fun to be had in here, but story-wise, I think there's a lot of stuff missing. And that's where I kind of feel myself struggling with it a couple of days removed. But yeah, I think there's some interesting ideas here. I think there's some interesting directorial choices. And then there are just not. I think we struggle. We'll talk about this in spoiler-filled territory. We struggle in an MCU right now that is very slapdash in how it decides to choose what matters and what doesn't matter from previous things, or in the things it's attempting to set up, and it doesn't. Given the post-Endgame track record, I don't have great confidence that even the teases we get in terms of like, here's where the MCU is going to move forward here, especially now that like Deadpool is the only MCU movie coming out next year. Everything else has been pushed to 2025 because of the strikes and everything. I think so, maybe something from this movie will get referenced in Deadpool, but if it doesn't, then we're talking at least 2 years before any of these threads really get picked up again. And I think that's a pain point for the MCU. I think like the combination of COVID and now strikes have really derailed the momentum that they had. Obviously, this is the 33rd Marvel film.
I also think that's also part of it is like I think people, I don't know if it's Marvel fatigue is the best way to put it, but I think that Marvel has established itself as such a like interior genre unto itself. Like it's its own, not interior, internal genre. Like it's no longer like the MCU films are no longer just superhero films. They are MCU films. Like they are Marvel films. And for better or worse, that has like isolated them from regular, what you'd expect from regular film development, production, and everything else. Like it's extremely corporate on such a intrinsic level
Mm-hmm.
that it's, how do I put this? It's not like we're going to get a and I think this is part of like the acceptance that we have to get of like we told Disney and Marvel we love that this is an isolated universe and we love that everything's interconnected, and they said bet, and they've just given us that nonstop. And so everything is always going to be connected somewhere to something else, and everything is taking place in the same universe. And so when people say Marvel fatigue, it's like, is it Marvel fatigue, or have we just been all consuming a single genre of movie every year, and now we're fatigued of that genre? It's less of like the property or the IPs so much as I mean, it's not just Marvel fatigue. Everybody's in like cinematic universe fatigued.
I mean, I've never really ascribed to Marvel fatigue or Star Wars fatigue before it and stuff. It's because if you gave me great versions of all these things, I will be happy, and I'm not going to ever get fatigued by that. The problem is they haven't been great. Like they've been a lot less like high quality than what we were getting in kind of the lead up to Endgame and then Infinity War and Endgame, obviously, as kind of like a pinnacle, But to your point of like every like interconnectedness, we talked about a couple weeks ago on that D Plus show, Guardians of the Galaxy is largely self-contained, and it's really not trying to touch the broader MCU as a whole outside of the Guardians series and obviously Infinity or Endgame, where Gamora's fate kind of got sealed, in a third-party venture kind of thing. And then even Loki, very much season 2 kind of keeps a very self-contained kind of part of the MCU. And I think that's where it can oftentimes struggle. And some of the weakest things for me in the MCU tend to be, Avengers Age of Ultron or Black Panther Wakanda Forever, the elements where they're very clearly setting up a future thing, but that thing isn't for years down the road. And with Age of Ultron setting up Thor Ragnarok ends up being a vastly different thing than
Completely
the visions
different, yeah.
that Thor gets in his cave of, water or whatever. In Wakanda Forever, Ironheart now is, a Disney Plus show that maybe will happen in 2025.
It's entirely possible
kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so I think it's there are too many times where they devote too much time to a thing they don't have actually fully fleshed out. And I think that's where there's an element of it that I think is struggling right now in the way that everybody was like, the sequel trilogy of Star Wars sucks because it didn't have a central idea going into what that trilogy was going to be. And so it ends up being a wildly different thing for each of those 3 movies. I think despite, interviews and stuff where Kevin Feige said, no, we've got like a 10-year plan kind of thing. And there's a big, whiteboard or whatever where he's got they've obviously had to shift just even the existing slate of things so much due to pandemic and other concerns that that slate isn't or is way more fluid, and as a result the interconnectivity of everything falls super flat. I mean, as another example that I keep seeing pop up and stuff, the end of the Eternals, not only the whole wild there's a giant statue that's now outside of the Indian Ocean or whatever, or that has barely been it got it's a thumbnail on a computer screen in She-Hulk or something like that. But even that plus the post-credit scene of here's Harry Styles as a character that maybe we'll ever see pop. I don't they've not done a good job with this generation of MCU stuff, tying it together when they do want to tie it together, and then when they don't want to tie it together, and we'll talk about some of these even in this movie, they're having to pull such obscure things at this point that it's that kind of seems interesting, maybe. But I have to dig into like ending explained videos to understand why. And so I like it just ends up leaving me more confused than excited as I leave the theater. And that's often disappointing. But this movie itself, I think we'll kind of wrap up and then head into spoiler territory. Again, like Iman Vellani is the highlight and the easy standout. I think it does suck that this movie, I haven't looked today to see like what projections of opening weekend box office were, but everything in the lead up to this has been like, it's going to be the worst, release ever. It's like, well, yeah, because the strike ended a day before the film released. So there was no actors out there promoting it until they showed up Thursday night at screenings and stuff to be like, surprise, I can do this now. So that's going to be a huge, factor. Plus, of course, the already for the vocal pieces of shit that are on the internet that are going to be like, haha, this is a victory, and Disney can't be woke, Marvel can't be woke. Like the first Captain Marvel made $1 billion, despite all of those people pissed off about everything. And so it's unfortunate that the combination of post-pandemic just general box office drop off, plus MCU drop off because a lot of people are frustrated with the quality or encountering fatigue or whatever. It sucks that like the wrong people are going to take, or the shitty people are going to have the wrong takeaways about how well this movie performs, unless it surprises everybody and ends up still bringing in tons of money. I will say, like, it was nice seeing maybe a lowered expectation going into it. So a lot of the word of mouth I've seen come out of the movie has been like, hey, yeah, it was fun. And that's ultimately where I felt like this isn't by any mean like top tier Marvel for me. It's like middle of the road, with a few very standout things being Iman Vellani and some of the like choreography and gimmicky stuff of the combat. But there are also parts of this that I'm like, yeah, this is like Thor: The Dark World territory. And so, yeah, that's I think my spoiler-free, complicated thoughts on this. Any final thoughts before we dive into full spoilers there, Cam?
Nope, I'm ready to hop in.
All right, then this is your final warning. We're going to dive into spoilers right now. And I will go ahead and throw it to you, Cam, because you did pop very hard for the mid-credits tease that we got of Kelsey Grammer as the Beast.
Yeah.
What went through your mind when that came on screen?
I couldn't believe what I was saying.
Did you catch it like when the blue flurry thing walked in front of the camera and we're hearing Kelsey Grammer's voice, or did it take like seeing Kelsey Grammer's CG face?
There was the part of me that like immediately recognized it. Mm-hmm. And then there was the delay, like, so subconsciously, immediately I picked up on it. Mm-hmm. The delay from subconscious to conscious thought
was like, no fucking way.
Yeah, was just like constant denial until it was so, because it wasn't even like, oh, he shows up and like, oh my God. It is like a couple seconds after he's on screen that it finally clicked for me. Like the subconscious and conscious met and finally agreed that yes, this was happening in front of me. Mm-hmm. It felt like a fever dream. It felt unreal. And it's not because like the CGI was better or anything. It legitimately, I could not believe that this was happening in front of my eyes. And it wasn't some fake ass internet thing. It was real. Mm-hmm. And I avoided any spoilers of it because you mentioned the night before people on Twitter were being shitty.
Yeah, I saw enough teases and people being like, oh, I feel like I'm inspired for no reason whatsoever to go watch an animated series. And I'm like, okay, they're clearly referencing the X-Men animated series, and so some X-Man's going to pop up here and blah blah blah.
And for it to be Kelsey Grammer's Beast, though, mm-hmm. that was also very surprising for me. But overall, at the tippity top of this was just, I could not believe it was happening in front of me. Mm-hmm. I was blown away by it. And I still have to pinch myself thinking like, oh no, that really happened.
Yeah.
That wasn't like something that I dreamed of last night. Like that just actually happened in front of me. And it's who fucking knows?
Yeah, that's where that's where one of the elements for me was like, okay, sure, Kelsey Grammer, fine, whatever. It's weird that like yeah, they are getting that much mileage out of the Kelsey Grammer beast, which has only been in 2 movies prior to this. He was in X3, X-Men United or whatever it was, and then he popped back in at the end of Days of Future Past, right?
Mhm.
And so even there's been like an 8-year gap in between all of his performances, pretty much. And then yeah, now he pops up here. I think it probably like he's certainly I think just a more iconic performer probably than if it had tried to be like the Nicholas Hoult one, especially because like the age of the whole X-Men First Class generation being like we spanned 30 years across our movies but our characters aged 6 is certainly always a weird element.
Yeah,
um
it's certainly weird when it's just like Michael Fassbender and he's like supposed to be like 40 or 50,
yeah,
and
when
it's like
like when
you're
you see
still a
those
hot 30-year-old.
Yeah, when you see those
So
like memes of like Charles Xavier in 1981 versus Charles Xavier in 1984 or whatever, it's like he goes from being like Michael or James McAvoy super young to Patrick Stewart super old in a 3-year span, and yeah, Matt Fassbender to McKellen. It's like yeah, this is weird.
doesn't work. Just
Yeah,
doesn't work. And but overall, like I mean, I that's something you can say about the last couple
yeah.
X-Men films.
I mean, yeah,
So
I never saw Dark Phoenix still.
no, I don't think anybody did. I
It's
don't know a single person who saw it except for like some people who do like MCU and review stuff.
Yeah. The other aspect of that mid-credit scene, of course, is Monica waking up in this alternate dimension that she's kind of trapped herself in to save the other one, and she wakes up and convenience of all conveniences, a character who's has her mom's face, is sitting there at her bedside, and so I kept waiting for that to be like revealed, like for her to kind of like slip into
Mystique.
Mystique, kind of yeah, blue. So I was like, okay, are they going to bring Rebecca Romaine back? Are they going to bring Jessica or Jennifer
Lawrence.
Lawrence? There you go, thank you. And nope, it's like they give a tease, and I guess they did give a name drop, but I didn't catch it. But they call her out as binary, which is just a character I do not know. I have no familiarity with, and that was why the scene ended, and I was like, they clearly like lingered on her new costume in a way that is supposed to tell me who that is, but I had no idea who it was until again watching like mid-credit scene explained kind of thing. And apparently binary is somehow related to a Carol Danvers kind of thing, so it does seem to be setting up maybe some kind of weird crossover-y bit there. And obviously yeah, the big like getting the big X kind of doors and stuff like that, and a lot of the like iconography of the Fox films in that sequence.
Okay, so I was like, I'm pretty sure I recall binary being like in X-Men stuff. Like she
Yeah,
is
yeah,
like, so binary is like that makes sense to me though, that because binary is like X-Men in the comic books are intrinsically tied to the Kree and Skrull stuff in the greater universe during the 80s when those races were kind of like reintroduced into the Marvel comic books. There's like, and they even like adapted for the animated series.
mm-hmm.
They're like, especially the Kree, which is like Captain Marvel stuff. So the fact that like they're tying in, Monica Rambeau and like binary and whatnot, because I believe
Yeah,
actually Carol Danvers is binary.
that's exactly, yeah, it's binary is a Carol Danvers duplicate is basically what I would
Yeah.
see when I was looking that up and trying
For
to figure out who
for
this
people
character
confused,
is. And that
do not try to get into the like Carol Danvers in the comic books is literally like one of the biggest injustices to a single like fictional character of all time. So like try to like don't like anything can if it's weird to you, it's okay. It's even weird to comic book people.
yeah,
Like
so I think that's like that's the kind of thing that is like such a deep cut probably reference or something that like I imagine most people are leaving the theater being like, I'm confused. Why is her mom seemingly an X-Men? Why is she, and so like, yeah,
Well, it
there
ties
was,
into, and this is what my interpretation of it is that during the flashback scene, we have Carol talking to, what's her mom's first name? I don't want to just call her Monica's mom.
Maria Rambo.
Maria. When she's talking to Maria, when Maria said Maria's cancers come back, Maria said, like, Carol says, well, it should have been you. And so my interpretation of this is, in this universe, Maria Rambo is the one that makes it to the hangar first. She's the one in the plane.
Sure.
And so that's my interpretation of it is, in this universe, it's Maria Rambo who's the one who gets there. But
that can play well enough with, the last time we saw Loretta Lynch was Multiverse of Madness, where she was the Captain Marvel of that alternate universe that we go to. So you can kind of play those things there. But if binary is Carol Danvers, Maria Rambo is still not Carol Danvers. So that is still just a weird, here's just the coincidence of all coincidences that it's your mom and the roles are reversed and now she's overlooking you in the bed kind of thing. And
that's just kind of what my interpretation of it was. So like, it's like, is that convenient? Yeah, but we're 33 films into a cinematic universe. There's a lot of convenience.
Yeah. And again, it's like, oh, okay, sure. You're trying to give me the pop of like X-Men tie-in stuff, like you did at the end of Miss Marvel, like you did in Multiverse of Madness, but it's 2023, almost 2024 now, and Disney has had Fox and has had the access to the Marvel, the mutants for quite some time, and have yet to put anywhere on the slate, okay, here's when X-Men are being introduced into the universe. Here's the new X-Men movie kind of thing. And it's like, okay, like that's the thing that you need to do really based on the floundering. You need to breathe in new life. And I just don't know when it's going to happen.
I've just accepted that the X-Men, the entire mutant question is like, not the best way to actually phrase that. The entire mutant situation with like the whole Fox merger and everything. I just have this big feeling that like Kevin Feige sees X-Men and mutants in general as like the redheaded stepchild that he doesn't want. Like it was never part of my original plans kind of thing.
I mean, that didn't stop him from throwing Spider-Man in. So if that is the case, his original plans are faltering left and right. And I think people have seen that. And hey, that's where you need to kind of reverse course or change course or whatever.
For sure. And like, I'm not in disagreement with it. I just think if it's, people are like, well, why hasn't it like been happening? I was like, I don't know, probably because he has a 10-year plan and he never slotted mutants into it. And now like he gets to play with mutants and he's just kind of like, eh. Because it brings up a lot of complications with it, right?
That's the bigger thing, though, is like, I don't think there's a 10-year plan. Because,
not anymore, no.
If there was a 10-year plan, well, he's been changing plenty of other things in that 10-year plan, and, who cares? I
think fate has made it a necessity that 10-year plan is out the window. Yeah. So, I think between strikes, COVID, and everything in between, there is no solid plan at this point. Especially because of don't forget that there's also been all that, the whole comeuppance of the Bobs. Sorry, comeuppance is the wrong word.
Bob Chapek and Iger.
Yeah, the whole Chapek and Iger saga that happened with leadership, and which means that things like lots of stuff is also happening at like a top level thing at Disney. Mm-hmm. And so, there's a lot of things at play, a lot of balls. If
anything, though, like Iger was the one who set everything up for Disney Plus and basically left after Disney Plus was off and running. Like he was like, okay, I got that out the door, and now we're hitting a global pandemic. I'm gonna head out, and then Chapek has to take over during a very rough time, just like universally. And he definitely made bad decisions, but like Iger hasn't come back and made great decisions either. So
he certainly has not.
Yeah. He's having to deal with the decisions he made previously that, hey, maybe investing all that money into programming for Disney Plus was going to be more costly than you were going to ever, see come out of it. So, it'll be interesting to see just where all this stuff shakes out. Similarly, in the future kind of planning that we get kind of the end scene of the film with Kamala very much like replicating in a somewhat meta sense the Iron Man post-credit scene from way back when, where she kind of plays the Nick Fury role with Haley Steinfeld as Kate Bishop.
Just one of the best scenes in the entire movie is just her redoing that scene.
Mm-hmm. Did you think you were the only young event or young kid superhero or whatever? Yeah,
I'm 23.
I'm 23. Whatever. Also, did you know Ant-Man has a daughter? So obviously setting up a Young Avengers
let's go
thing down the line.
If you give me a Haley Steinfeld, like if you give me like this cast of like for Young Avengers, I'm on board 100%.
Yeah.
Like you cannot go wrong with that.
Yeah. Like seeing even like from seeing the bow pop up in the window and then immediately we get to like Lucky. I was like, yay, hooray.
Peace dog.
As a Haley Steinfeld like fan anyway. One
of the best young actresses of her entire generation. Absolutely phenomenal.
And also killing it as Gwen Stacy in the Marvel multiverse of stuff. But again, like that is a thing that like they've been setting up the pieces for years, but when are we actually going to see that all come together? And is it going to be these three and Cassie, and like who else is going to be part of that crew kind of is I think where like a lot of this does come into play of like, who are going to be the Young Avengers?
I mean, we saw at the end of She-Hulk, Young Hulk.
Oh yeah, that's right. We did. Who I've completely forgotten. So that's, a great kind of setting. I mean, if anything, like She-Hulk could be a part of the Young Avenger team, probably. And that's where you get like, by the time any of this stuff comes out, none of these kids are going to be kids anymore. I guess Wanda's kids are other Young Avenger people, but, they don't really exist in this reality. So how are we going to get them into the fold? I
don't know, man. Just bring it back. Just bring back Wanda. Bring back her kids. Let's just make this happen. Hell, bring back Vision.
That's all. Yeah. Like, the multiverse is crashing stuff. But we still got White Vision out there somewhere. Sorry,
that just reminded me of a meme.
From WandaVision.
A meme that exists, and I won't get into it here, but it's
cool.
It's yeah.
That's another thing. Like the last two things this movie tries to leave me with are very much like very surface level pops. And it's like, as soon as I spend a little bit more time thinking about it, I'm like, okay, you're giving me like an immediate desire for gratification here, but I know logistically this isn't going to pay off for a couple years at the earliest. And so then I'm left disappointed, because of just the like, hey, is that ever actually going to happen as well? Or are we going to, is the MCU going to fall so far that they go into DC territory and they reboot their entire universe?
Yep.
Cool. In a similar vein, I which I alluded to kind of in our spoiler-free stuff, we get absolutely zero reference to Secret Invasion.
Nope.
Despite Secret Invasion ending with Samuel L. Jackson going up with his wife.
Oh, can we
to the spaceship?
Can we just get into this now then?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, the fuck is like, what the fuck was the point of Secret War? What the
Secret
fuck?
Invasion.
Secret Invasion. Sorry, what's the point of Secret Invasion at all? Yeah. What the whole? We don't have a place for you guys to go. There's a fucking
there was a whole Kree planet.
Yeah, a whole Kree planet that's like chilling out in like a vacation vibe. Like, the fuck is going on? Did nobody pay attention to what the fuck was going on with Secret Invasion?
Well, maybe that didn't have room for a million Kree that are, just hanging around on planet Earth now.
Then why aren't they taking like pointers from fucking Emperor of Kree or King Kree?
Yeah.
Like, or Skrull, not Kree, Skrulls.
Skrull,
This it's so frustrating to just like what was the point of all of that? Maria Hill's dead.
Mm-hmm.
A character's permanently dead. And I still have such a bone to pick with Secret Invasion for the way that it sets up so many interesting things and then does nothing with it. It's just such a nothing show. And it's so frustrating to see there's absolutely zero payoff from any of it.
Yep. Yeah. They're evacuating the ship. I'm like, okay, well, clearly his wife isn't anywhere up here because I imagine she wouldn't be stuck into a cat flirkin. Much like the Khan family didn't have to go through that. All of the other people that are, up there and actually work with Fury had to go through that indignity. But the Khans got to just kind of wrangle cats. That said, like, the Khans are a delight.
Incredible.
As continuing on, like, the fact that this is almost more than a Captain Marvel sequel, a Miss Marvel series sequel, because we certainly get kind of more of her characters really in the fold here. Even if we don't get, her brother's wife or her best friend, like they're just completely absent. We get, an allusion to the wife when the brother's making a video on the space elevator kind of thing. But yeah, like they're fun because, of course, the heart at the center of Kamala's family is, a joyful element of that. But then they're paired with a very different Nick Fury than we've really ever had before as well, which is like this is where we get to like, there's no plan, and also they've just kind of given up on consistency of character, because he's out there
he's bitter, broken, and brutal in Secret Invasion, and then he's fun and quippy and like snappy and like
go Monica, black girl magic. I'm like, I don't like, what is that? What? Who are you?
Like,
it's just a very interesting. That's like, these are elements of the film that just didn't work for me really at all.
Here's my thing: is I'm fine with those elements. There's just no.
Yeah, they're fine and fun, and Samuel L. Jackson's a fun performer to watch. It's just like, okay, you've just given up on the consistent elements that you've tried to build over the last 15 years of this universe, and just been like, well, we're just going to make him quippy and silly this time. Whereas, like, because there was such a thing, coming out of Spider-Man Far From Home of like, well, it's okay that wasn't, that Samuel L. Jackson performance was more quippy and stuff because we found out he was secretly a Skrull all along. And it's like, okay, sure.
Or he can just have some quippy moments and quippy sides to it. We don't have to
instead
in-film retcon it to being like, well, it's okay that he was different. It's like, well, maybe he's just can be a multifaceted character who sometimes he's quippy and sometimes he's an asshole, because guess what? That's how people are in real life. Like, depending on who you're around, you're different. Like, maybe when he's around younger people and he gets like a funner energy around him.
Yeah. Maybe it's, but in that case, I feel like somebody has to acknowledge it.
Yeah, 100%. Yes.
Oh, that's right. Whenever Goose is around, you're such a more fun guy to be around.
You suddenly turn into a baby. Like, you suddenly start babying Goose, and you turn into a totally different. Like, you could totally frame it like that.
Despite the fact that he's the one who took your eye in the first place 30 years ago.
It's like Nick Fury, when it's like, well, Nick Fury holds grudges. It's like, I don't know. Nick Fury Goose took his eye.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody be like, what do you mean Goose? Like, Goose took his eye. And it's like, but Goose is like his favorite thing in the world. And it's like, yeah, Nick Fury tends to love the things that hurt him if nobody's paid attention to that.
Mm.
There could be so many different things, but to have those internal conversations, there has to be a level of consistency that we just don't see. Yeah. And not only that, but also in the writer's strike and kind of like the aftermath of the writer's strike, we found out that the process for a lot of MCU projects in the last 5 to 6 years, like anywhere post Endgame, has really been a like not typical process.
Even I remember watching the kind of like the making of Multiverse, where it was very much like the guy who wrote Loki season 1 basically got tasked to do a version of the Multiverse of Madness script. and he basically turned in his first draft the day that everything started getting shut down for COVID, kind of thing. And those movies are very much okay. The CGI is being worked on for the next 2 or 3 movies right now, and despite, and scripts are being written or rewritten or reshot around those things. And so I think that's what you have here. You have, I do appreciate, and other people call this out certainly before I did. But the plot of this movie is very much the Spaceballs plot.
Yeah,
the
100%.
the villain of Spaceballs, just we're gonna suck the atmosphere and we're gonna suck the water and we're gonna suck the sun so we can fix our planet, kind of thing. And so like those are the big CG.
Also, nobody just
stuff.
calling out the villain on just like, why are you just so obsessed with stealing shit? Why don't you just like, there's solutions to your actual problems, and nobody's pointing that out to her. Although I do love the menacing, like, hey, we're not trying to be like the worst people. We're going to rebuild our empire, but hey, like, you should join our empire. Well, what if we say no? Well, I'd hate for your people to not be able to breathe because we're stripping your atmosphere one way or the other. Mm-hmm. And like, there's a level of like okayness to that. Like, okay, but I mean, you're still awful, terrible colonizer, like XP, like stand-ins here for colonization, but like doing nicer colonization than before. I'm like, still not good.
And even that, you were referencing the one line in the movie that like,
oh yeah,
does that. Like anywhere else she goes, she just immediately is like, we're taking your stuff.
Yeah, I don't understand why that one was different. I feel like there's a lot of like, there's still a lot of like consistency missing for a lot of it, to the point where, I mean, I made the comment on our way home last night, 2 nights ago, that it feels like there's like a good, like anywhere from 20 to 40 minutes of content, like cut on the floor.
Oh yeah.
Or just left out of the film. And a lot of connective tissue, I think, internally in this film for a lot of like logical points to make sense in a bigger frame of reference. Like her plan and her strategy is part of that as well.
There are, as I think back on it, there are multiple scenes where like Monica just kind of gives like an exposition dump to explain what we need to do to get to the next point, that I feel like was probably a couple scenes, or you went to a different location, you kind of learn information. And here it's just, she kind of makes a whole bunch of like logical leaps to get to be like, okay, the next thing she's got to steal is the sun.
Yep, there's that, but there's also
the bands work this way, and they get used to, they were used to create all the jump points, and if the like somehow Monica knows that if the power is too much, it's going to crack a hole in between realities, or that's what she's seeing when the hole in between realities does get cracked. That's another thing. Like, did Dar-Ben know that she was basically going to be killing herself when she like brings the bangles together and stuff? It was like, I
don't think so. They made a point that like there is a line where they're studying the bangle more, and her man bun sidekick tells her, hey, there's like a genetic component to these bangles that like it, like there's something, it's very dangerous for you to be using them. Like you shouldn't be using them. We like, let me do more tests on it.
That's right.
So it's safe for you to use.
When she was just coming and being like, no, we need to figure it out.
It's after Captain Marvel shows up and triggers her PTSD.
Yeah.
And she kind of like goes way off the rails. Cause that's also like, she's like being a diplomat and stuff. And then as soon as Captain Marvel shows up, like
the Annihilator
and like triggers her, and she's just like off the rails at that point. From there, that like, that might be like the trigger point is Captain Marvel shows up, and then leaps of logic happen for the villain. But to this point that I was trying to make is that I feel like Man Bun sidekick definitely explains to her, hey, this is a situation like you using this. There's a genetic component to these bangles that are not like that you do not fit and will hurt you. And we see over time, like the bangle is like, she has like veins of purple showing up on her hand multiple times. They show like it is hurting her to use these bangles. And the more energy and power she gets, it becomes worse and worse. Where Kamala, she has no issues. We know now that she's a mutant, and like she's also like half like interdimensional being, like from this parallel light universe.
Yeah, even though that's very mumbo jumbo-y and like I will say to kind of the 1 hour and 45 minutes of this movie, when a good chunk of that time is also just replaying stuff we've seen in Captain Marvel or Miss Marvel's or WandaVision. That's another like thing in the they're bringing in all those elements to catch people up with the critical details if they miss those other things. And what you're talking about was not one of those critical details they brought into the fold. So like, no, I don't think that really plays into effect to a degree enough that they needed to explain.
Oh no, I don't think so. I was just making a commentary that the reason we don't see, if anybody's like, well, Kamala's able to use, like in Kamala's show, Miss Marvel, they go into detail about like it's different for Kamala. Kamala's not entirely human, and
the broader thing we get is she had the one band, and it took her through time and space already. So sure, like the other band will work fine for her, and she can manage that power in a way that like ultimately it almost ends up being like, oh, this person dies in almost the same way as Ronan the Accuser, of like, oh, a power stone was too powerful for them and they just kind of disintegrate.
Yep. Kree did not have a good a solid like track record with powerful artifacts. Maybe they should just like put those down. Yeah. I did appreciate at the very end they kind of talk about like the state of the different planets and where they're at. Nick Fury is just like, we're working with I almost call it Aladdin, but whatever the water planet is, we're working with that. Like it's not like, oh, everything went back like in Spaceballs where it's like they hit reverse and so the atmosphere goes back. They're like, no, there's still some serious issues with it and we're working on it. Like we'll fix, like things will get, like we got scientists like working together across the different planets to kind of like make sense and make peace with all of this. Yeah. But there's definitely problems with it. I will say one of my favorite things, and I have no doubt that there's more stuff they shot because I went back to watch a trailer, and there's a lot more singing and dancing. Yeah. That is not in the actual film itself, so that's definitely been cut. Yeah, that's going. Being one of the other like highlights is the like Aladdinian planet where they communicate through song, and that's one of those things that like gets introduced and then is almost immediately like set aside and we move on to the next thing. It's like, okay, it gets introduced. There's like probably a good half an hour extra of that planet.
Probably, yeah.
Because also, I will say, the prince of that planet is one of the most attractive individuals that exists in the human race.
This is Park Seo-joon, big South Korean star, and very much like appealing to that audience. With a lot of people annoyed by how much it seems his part was cut down in this movie.
Oh, definitely. I could have used more of him. Yeah. I totally, like, I think I said God damn her when he shows up on screen because he's an attractive man. Yeah. The
idea that, Captain Marvel is married, marriage of political convenience or whatever.
Well, and her whole thing, she's like, I helped out, like, I know the person.
I helped out with a legal thing.
Like, he's like, I have a good friend that's there. And so they set up, it's a marriage of like political convenience, but also a marriage of like platonic friendship is kind of the setup of it. And then immediately she gets into this Captain Marvel-esque ball gown and sings and dances with him. And I have no doubt that there's an alternative take where we get more of that, of their conversation.
And that was what that was one of those moments where like, I sat there thinking, I wish they had, and I know they do. So it's one of those, I wish I sat in closed caption screenings. Because they're doing all this beautiful singing, but I had no idea what they actually ended up talking about.
Because it doesn't focus on them. So all we hear is like the singing as like background.
And I mean, like the mix was a bad mix. Absolutely. Like we weren't hearing the lyrics were not the forefront of the critical information they were getting across.
Yeah, there's some stuff that it's like, man, there's I'm excited for whatever extras come out of this movie.
Yeah, and then
because it's gonna fill in a lot of
because like the B-roll that we see kind of throughout or intercut is just like random shots of Monica and Kamala dancing,
which I dig, I love, I thought was fun.
I would have liked Kamala trying to communicate with them, and like Kamala trying to sing, to talk to people. Like Kamala making a friend on that planet is what like that planet needed to have any kind of like so it doesn't just feel like a fleeting stop on this journey.
For me, it was, I thought from the trailer, especially when I rewatched it, I was like, oh, I thought there was going to be like more interaction from Kamala and the prince.
I mean, like, if anything, yeah, like it's very much evocative of Bollywood style stuff, and she had a whole big Bollywood Tollywood number in her show at her brother's wedding.
Yep.
So like
could have been great.
It and like as they're like dancing up the steps and stuff, she's getting way more into it than Monica certainly is. But yeah, I think it could have been like she easily could have like picked something up and, you know, done a bit and communicated, you know, part of their plight with them, or like part of the plan, I guess, as well. Is like, that's another thing, is like, okay, they're immediately like, okay, the plan is you're going to be the decoy and then we're going to attack and we're going to try and get the bangles off her, and that, you know, goes awry and just fight breaks out. And okay, and then Kamala gets a, you know, magical scarf so she can start beating the crap out of people.
There's very little to no explanation about that. Yep. It's just like fly by. He goes, use your scarf.
Exactly. Here's how you can do something without using your powers, because we can't have you switching places with people right now. Or until we want you to switch.
Yeah, there's a lot about that it's just like, man, there's like a lot that could have been done to give better explanation to a lot of stuff. But it is like, overall, like, here's the thing. This is not counterpart. But this is like, okay, these are the gripes we have, but still we both said this is a better Marvel film that we enjoyed.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of speaks to, there's like, also the question is like, how do you change that, or how do you improve that and make it work succinctly and doesn't take away from the niceness that is the brevity of this film? And it's, I don't know.
Yeah, I think like or like talking about that does segue into, I think a lot of the fun for me was the action stuff and the body switching kind of moments.
Absolutely, yes.
I was worried when basically like the first couple we really get are the ones they've shown in every trailer kind of thing of Captain Marvel, you know, crashing into the Kamala, the Khan house, or Kamala, you know, popping up next to Goose and immediately freaking out when Goose eats a whole bunch of people,
which is great. I thought, I'm like, okay, these are working in like the brief frames we got from the trailers. We're seeing them in context and they're working.
Yeah.
But is this all we're going to get?
Exactly. That was my concern. Yeah. Like when the first couple we see are ones we've seen, you know, every movie we've been to in the last, you know, year. I was like, like please go somewhere else with it. Go further with this. Don't let it just be these things. And so I appreciated that. Yes, it did continue, and it was very much the bus fight scene from Shang-Chi.
Yes.
Kind of element of this film of like, okay, yeah, the trailers gave you a couple of those moments like ad nauseum, but it's a way longer sequence, and like they put a lot of time and thought into, okay, like, you know, people getting shot through the air through the Khan household, and you know, obviously the Khans having to deal with that and clean up, the Khans being part of the fight and like, you know, holding mops down on, you know, the baddies and stuff as well. I thought was a fun element of it. And then I also really like, obviously then we get like in the space elevator and stuff where, you know, people are switching places when they don't want to be switching places and stuff. But I also really liked, again, kind of when the characters are all like bonding together and like Carol is like trying to make amends to Kamala. Like there's that beautiful moment kind of as they're, you know, trying to evacuate the first planet when Kamala is trying to save people and Carol says like, save who you can. We've got to go. Like, we can't save everybody. And that's a hard lesson that Kamala has to learn in that moment.
And it pulls back into when Kamala has to be the vehicle for Carol to learn you can't win every fight.
Yeah.
Which is something that ever since she kind of like became the full-on Captain Marvel at the end of her film, that's not been an issue for her. And now she's getting into the issue where she can't win this fight, but she won't stop fighting. And so it plays into it. And then as soon as she learns that lesson, that's when they have that beautiful moment.
Yeah. And we get to see them kind of like reconciling and Carol kind of apologizing, and then we get just fun little like moments of them, like their montage of trying to get a hold of and kind of control and work together to figure out their powers. Probably most notably in like they're playing jump rope together and okay,
so
1, 2, 3,
fun.
go. And they switch places, or we get that like extended bit where Kamala isn't ready to jump in, isn't ready to jump in.
Just 1, 2, 3, go.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, go.
The bits of them like, juggling, or, one of them's going to throw up food. They use their power and another one comes down and gets to eat the thing and stuff. Like they had fun with doing those bits in a kind of in a non-action sequence way, and it was just like a nice lighthearted character bonding moment. Obviously we also get nice kind of reunion stuff finally, like overdue reunion between Carol and Monica, and the dealing with like the trauma between those two, I think. And I did like that you mentioned it earlier, like I loved that it was one of the most striking moments of WandaVision, kind of getting to see Monica blip back following the snap, and she's in the hospital room that her mom died in, basically, and she wasn't there for it, and like the heartbreakingness of that. I loved.
Well, it was her mom got better and then got sick again and died while she was gone.
Yeah,
and it's like that brutal aspect of it.
I loved that we got that moment between Maria and Carol. So like Carol had come back to Earth, and obviously I guess we did see Carol come back to Earth in Endgame, kind of prior to the 5 years later.
Yep.
So I love that
we got that, but also it was in between she tells her the cancer's back.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is like that happened within the 5 years while Monica was blipped away.
But also Carol thought Monica was never coming back.
True. Yeah.
That's another added like.
Yeah.
Cut.
It's they don't know if they're ever going to get anybody back, kind of thing. And we get a nice little callback to that, at the end of like, just holding on to it until Monica gets back. So yeah, I liked the different relationship dynamics we had to see with our core characters. They were just kind of saddled with a whole bunch of like the fetch questy kind of, okay, we got to go to this planet. Oh, we didn't get there in time. Okay, we got to go to this planet. Hey, we got here in time, but we weren't quick enough, or we weren't able to, save the day. Okay, now we know where she's going next. We're gonna get there. We're gonna make the plan, and finally, we save the day, kind of thing. But then we also, while all that's happening with them, we get all the space station stuff of, we're getting an egg infestation of what ends up being Flurkin eggs, and so we get a whole bunch of like baby kittens around, and there's the power's blown most of our evac pods out. Well, we can only fit 15 people in, but we can fit a shit ton of cats in, so everybody gets eaten by a cat. Ha 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 ha. Like it's such a weird tonal thing.
It is, but I loved it. So
I didn't love it. I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it.
I loved it though. I just love the idea that it's like people like, do they know that they're going to be okay? Yes. Does that change the like instinctual aspect of yourself of like not wanting to be eaten by a Flurkin?
I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah. That's like really it was that kind of thing of like the panic that all of the crew people had about it, including like we got two of Fury's kind of like right-hand people on the ship. The larger gentleman we see kind of at the end, and he kind of like accepts his fate. He's one of the last ones at the end. He kind of like, we see him, not even in like the foreground of a shot. We just kind of see him in the background of a shot, like accept his fate, plug his nose, and like fall back into a Flurkin eating him.
Yep.
But we see his other his other right-hand person terrified and running screaming and trying to avoid at all costs getting, and it takes like Kamala knocking her out basically and apologizing. It's like, that is a very traumatic thing. And all the while, we've got like a voice on the intercom basically being like, please let yourself get eaten by the Flurkins. You will be okay. But yeah, it's like, it's the panic and screaming of everybody.
I feel like that's reasonable though.
All while memory is playing. And I fucking hate cats. So that's another aspect.
Yeah,
of it.
I hate cats too, but I thought it was a good touch.
For Andrew Lloyd Webber's cats is on full effect there.
The only thing I hate about that is that Andrew Lloyd Webber's going to get some sort of money from this.
Sort of licensing,
some sort of licensing fee or something from that. That's the only problem I have with it, because Andrew Lloyd Webber shouldn't receive any more money for the rest of his life.
He's already a billionaire. He's going to be fine.
I know.
He is like one of the richest musicians in the world.
Shame that.
Indeed. So yeah, I like it. I'm of two minds of it. Like, sure, there were moments of it where I was like, that's funny, that's good beat. And then there were other moments where it was just like, this feels like it's pulling from a completely different movie. And I think that's ultimately like where I fall with so much of this, is like it felt like so many different drafts of Captain Marvel 2 / Miss Marvel script stitched together in a way that kind of works. I
feel like it works. I think I don't feel like it kind of works. But I do agree. I think that this is definitely like a Frankenstein monster for sure of a film.
Yeah. We didn't even talk about the Valkyrie cameo that we got.
Great cameo though. Love Valkyrie. Love that pop up. Like the whole like, hey, like, was there something? Maybe. Well, like, who knows?
Yeah. They've definitely, like, both actors have alluded to being like, that'd be a cool thing. We'd like that. And that's
maybe that was a fun thing that happened. You never know.
I believe that was a nice little nod also, because Tessa Thompson was in the director's prior project, which was the Candyman reboot from a couple years ago.
Yeah. Good reboot. Candyman's really good.
I believe that's right. Maybe not. I think she's done something with him. But yeah, like Carol says a couple, beats before we get the Valkyrie introduction. Like, I've called a friend. She's going to help. And so immediately, I'm like, okay, like going through the Rolodex of characters, like, who is she calling? Who is going to come and help? And didn't think about Valkyrie until like the Bifrost comes in. I was like, of course.
Perfect timing, perfect transport device. Like,
also, like, okay, but did she also go and get the other ships that evacuated? Or did she only take the people from Carol's ship because we needed to get it to just be the Marvel's characters?
Maybe we'll see.
Yeah.
Or not, we'll see.
We'll
never see.
We're never going
know.
to go back to New Asgard.
No.
We're never going to see Skrulls on New Asgard with these people.
Maybe
even that, again, no reference to Secret Invasion. Like,
nope, none.
Hey, it's okay, actually. Skrulls, actually, no, you don't want to come to New Asgard, because the end of Secret Invasion, Skrulls are persona non grata, and aliens in general are persona non grata. Who knows if even New Asgard is safe? Like, because they are aliens too. Yep. So yeah, it's another like, fuck off, Secret Invasion. You don't matter. We're never going to come back to any of your penalties or ramifications until maybe Captain America, Brave New World, or whatever that one's called.
I doubt it. I just doubt it. Secret Invasion happened, and it's all
we're going to get some kind of reference, because Harrison Ford is playing President Ross, like taking over the William Hurt character, and will be president, taking over from Dermot Mulroney, I think.
Dermot Mulroney.
Or was it Dylan No, it was Dermot Mulroney, yeah.
I've seen the wedding. I've seen the wedding date enough times to know who Dermot Mulroney is. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, that was like okay, we'll get some line in that. But yeah, it's like, okay, yep, nope, Secret Invasion was just like
it was a waste of time in our lives.
Powerful end moment that wants you to think, oh, the status quo on Earth has changed. But it's like, sure, prove it to us when we actually see it change, and you haven't just forgotten about whatever comes next. So yeah, very, very frustrating and disappointing and all blah, blah, blah. Any other bits or bobs or anything you want to shout out?
Oh, I really enjoyed the moment where the King of the Skrulls takes off his crown after he realizes that like his empire has fallen, or his kingdom has fallen. This is a fun. This is not fun. That's just a very like nice note for a small actor's part where it's very poignant when he does it, and I liked that. I thought it was good. Other than that, like, yeah, no, I think we touched on it. There's the good, there's the bad, there's the ugly in this movie, and I think overall, though, it's a solid film.
Yeah.
Like, it is what it is. It's a Frankenstein of a film, but it's probably the best end result of a Frankenstein of a film. It's fun, it's kinetic, it has a lot going for it, and while it has some serious issues with it, I don't think that takes away from the fact that it's an upper echelon Marvel film in the post-Endgame world that we're in.
Little Woods was the project that Tessa Thompson was in that
the
director needed Costa.
I was like, I don't recall Tessa Thompson being in Candyman, but okay.
Tiona Paris, Monica Rambeau was in that Candyman.
Yeah.
Okay. But yes. So still, yeah. Anyway, yeah. Trying to think. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see, I guess, where we go in Deadpool, and if Deadpool is the next time we really see the MCU between. Oh, yes, Echo we will get in January, and then maybe we'll get a What If season 2. That's supposed to be out there somewhere.
Gross. No, I'm good. Thank you.
I enjoyed What If. I enjoy What If for what it is more than I've enjoyed a lot of the full length things that, almost often seem like their own what ifs, just full length what if episodes that are weaker. So at least the animated what ifs are, a 30-minute block, and we're in and out. So anyway. All right. Well, I think that will do it for this episode then. Thank you, Cam, for joining me to chat the Marvels here. Let's go around our metaphorical table, or actually our actual tables, with any plugs. You can follow Cameron at RevCabot, 2 B's and 2 T's. Anything you want to give a shout out to there, Cam?
Yeah, massive shout out to our last That D Plus show, where we talked about Loki season 2 and its finale. We really got pretty into the Duffy on that one, and it was a good time. I really think, it's also kind of a callback because I did a kind of like future call out and shout out for this episode, the Spoilercast. But yeah, kind of paying
snaking his own tail.
Yep. Doing some Ouroboros here, by going back to what I think, honestly, it's crazy that we got 2 massive Marvel drops in the same weekend, and it was just a really fun, awesome time this weekend because of it. So
I don't know if you are familiar with this. I was not, certainly when we saw the Marvels or Loki, but I've seen in plenty of posts and stuff since, Zawe Ashton, who plays Dar-Ben, the big bad of the Marvels.
Yeah, it's Tom Hiddleston.
Is engaged to Tom Hiddleston. So yeah, I was like, oh, that's interesting. That
good weekend for them.
Both had their big projects release on the same day. Yeah. All right. You can follow me at Trevor J. Starkey. In addition to kind of, that Disney Plus, D Plus shout out, we're doing kind of Marvel month here in November. So we did Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, we did Loki Season 2, and then the next couple weeks are going to be the first couple Tom Holland Spider-Man movies. So Spider-Man Homecoming and Spider-Man Far From Home, as No Way Home is not yet available. So we will visit that somewhere down the line. But yeah, go check out that, and then also go check out my Let's Plays on youtube.com/thatnerdysite, where I'm continuing on my Baldur's Gate 3 Let's Play. This week we'll be heading down into the sewers of I guess not the sewers, but heading beneath the lower city to face off against a murder tribunal. And then we're also going to go deal with some hag stuff. So go check out those episodes when they drop. You follow all of us over at That Nerdy Site, or go to thatnerdysite.com for all the latest from us. Once again, if you liked what you heard, please remember to like, subscribe, rate, review, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. As always, thank you for listening. Stay nerdy and be good to each other.